My name is Brett Smith, owner of Whitetail Land Management Services. This is the public land pick apart. All right, guys, we are back. We are back with another public land pick apart. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the public land pick apart, never watched a public land pick apart video, this is literally the cheat sheet, okay? If you're looking for out-of-state hunts, you're looking to go on trips, and you're trying to pick places to go, I'm doing the same thing, and I'm giving you the cheat sheet as to why I'm gonna pick certain spots, certain topographical features. We're just gonna get into the nitty-gritty, where you should put tree stands, all these things that you're gonna wanna know if you're going on a trip or going to try something out of state. A lot of guys go for those 3 to 5 day trips and they go out of state, and let's face it, you're just kind of taking a shot in the dark. You really never know what you're getting into. Well, I'm gonna try and give you some of the answers. So these places are places I've never hunted before. I'm just map scouting them the way that I generally map scout. So I might do it a little bit different than somebody else. So if somebody's used to doing it a certain way, maybe they can, take my information and see it, from a different angle. So with that being said, we've done them in a couple states already, probably Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, maybe Ohio. I wanted to go to another big buck state, okay? A state that a lot of people think about going and hunting, but this state's kind of hard to find good public land. Maybe not good public land, but just a lot of public land. It's the big buck state of Illinois, okay? So Illinois, let's face it, everybody knows that there's giants in Illinois. And it's definitely a place that most guys want to check off their whitetail bucket list. So I ended up picking a public piece of ground in Illinois. Looks like we're dealing with Siloam Springs State Park. That is that's the piece that we're going to be picking apart here. Public ground. And as I'm looking at it, just taking a glance at it now, there's a lot of roads. Okay, so a lot of guys would check this off their list, and so that goes into my head right away. Okay, most guys would probably check this off their list because there's a lot of trail systems, a lot of roads, and it does ease the access a little bit more. I'm trying to always think a step ahead of everybody else. So normally in my past, I guess I would have probably checked this place off my list and never even looked here for those reasons. But what I am noticing is there's a lot of topography. And where there's a lot of topography and a lot of range in topography, a lot of height difference, it's hard to get through. So yes, there might be a lot of roads, but if there's not roads to certain corners or crevices, people probably aren't going to be traveling to them. And the first one that catches my eye is this whole right section, the part I'm circling right now. So this whole section on the far right. Let's see from this road right here all the way to the other property line to the far east, how far we're dealing with. 1.3 miles. To the far east side. So 1.3 miles straight shot. There's no way you're taking a straight shot in this type of country. There is a lot going on as far as hill country and topography goes. So the downside to this, once again, another reason that some guys would probably check this off their list and say, I can't hunt that, is because the only axis is from the west, okay? When the only axis is from the west, think about predominant winds. Southwest, northwest coming out of the west. Well, your wind's technically blowing over your back a lot of times, blowing towards your destination. But we are in hill country, guys, and on a moderate to low wind, you never know what the wind's actually going to be doing. So I'm willing to risk it here. Maybe play some thermals during the day, bank on some different access routes through topography to get me from point A to point B. Okay, so as I look at this piece, here's the thing. If you're a flatlander and you have never hunted hill country, this video is really going to help you guys out a lot. But once you do start to understand hill country, there's no easier way to figure out pinches and funnels. I originally am from a state where it was pretty flat for the most part and never had to deal with any of this. But once I learned, I prefer hunting in hill country now. So just at a glance, one of the first things that are catching my eye is way in the back corner, of course. We always like to get all the way back in there. And if I look at the topo line, so what we're looking at here is a ridge top, okay? This is the top of a ridge. This 700 line is the top of a ridge right here. And you can see it gets narrow right here. Okay, so right there, that tells me it gets pretty steep on each side, or it starts to drop off on each side, which most likely means that deer want to take the path of least resistance and stay on the same elevation. A lot of times deer will run these topo lines in hill country, so right here where it pinches down might be a great tree stand spot. The other thing that's catching my eye, let's say we moved up a little bit closer into this area, is we have a ridge point over here. We have a slight ridge point here. We have a slight ridge point over here. And if we go a little bit farther to the south, we got a ridge point down here. We got a ridge point down here. Well, in hill country, guys, a lot of times these bucks like to bed, in theory, on top thirds ridges, on ridge points, so that they have a vantage point. So if we were to take an axis route, come all the way up and around, let's say on a southwest wind, and get down in here, and these bucks could be on any one of these ridge points, and ultimately the pinch is right here where the topo really pinches down, this might be a great spot to sit during the rut. If there's anything that wants to stay, like I said, on that level ground up on top of the ridge without dropping down into this super steep topography, they're going to eventually pass through there. This is a place where I would say if you sat for 3 days, eventually you're at least going to get a crack at a buck, or at least see a good shooter buck. So in hill country, like I said, a lot of times they'll run the topo lines. They don't want to have to go up and down a ton if they don't have to, but they will occasionally. The other thing I'm seeing right here is, so this whole bottom right here, I'm sure is a creek bottom that runs through here. Right, I mean, as you go through that bottom, you can see that there's a couple fingers or draws that come up out of the bottom. So the longer the draw, the bigger the pinch point, or the smaller the pinch point is on top of the ridge. So if that draw really cuts up into that ridge a lot, there's less easy spots for the deer to cross across that draw. They're 9 times out of 10 going to go up and over the top of it anyway, so that pinch point at the top there is going to be much smaller. So right here I'm noticing, you know, there's this draw, it comes up here and it snakes up into here. I might have very well walked past, let's say we went to the first spot that I just talked about, I very well might have walked past a really good spot. So maybe this is a good spot to start your first sit, just because the topo pinches everything off at the top there. And once again, eventually with time during the rut, let's say you're going on your rutcation, wouldn't be shocked if a buck ends up running through there. Let's see here. Once again, we're talking about leeward ridges. We're talking about buck bedding in hill country. And once again, those are in theory. I've seen the beds in the bottoms. I've seen them all over the place. A lot of guys like to talk about the leeward ridges and things like that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If we are talking about leeward ridges, another spot that's catching my eye is this ridge point, okay? Predominantly southwest winds. We get those 70, 80, 90% of the time, sometimes it feels like. Out on this point here of this ridge top would be a great spot for bucks to bed up top and look over this entire creek bottom. You know, kind of get that wind, that southwest wind coming up over the top of their back, and they can see everything down below them. They can be looking for does and catching the scent from everything behind them. So in a perfect world, where would I set up? Well, once again, you can see there's a little ridge finger here off to the left, little ridge finger off here to the right, but everything kind of narrows down to a point, okay? It almost looks like kind of like an arrowhead to a certain extent, and at the base of that is where the topo kind of pinches down, once again creating a natural pinch point. The timber might not look like a pinch, you know, it might not be thick to open cover or hardwoods to conifers or anything like that, but the topography itself is pinching down, and on each side of you know, those topo lines is a draw that pinches everything down. Once again, if there is a buck bedded out there, let's say we go and we scout this, and we do see a lot of buck sign down there, you know, really concentrated buck rubs. A lot of times I see like super concentrated buck rubs, let's say like within 5 to 10 yards. I'm really going to start picking apart this little area and see if there's a bed there, see if I can pick some hairs out of the bed, make sense of some bedding. And in that case, if there is, and we guess that he's out there on a southwest wind, maybe you run a trail camera, a cell camera, and it says, oh, this buck's out here on a southwest wind. Well, that pinch point where those draws come up would be an absolute dynamite spot. The spot I'm circling right now. I mean, this would be a dynamite spot. A little bit hard to get to, but then again, we're in hill country. I mean, everything's a little bit hard to get to. There's no easy access route. Let's see here. This whole corner, like I said, for numerous reasons, I think most guys would stay out. Predominantly westerly winds, a little bit harder spot to hunt. unless you really know how to play topo and get out into these certain spots, you know, using thermals and things like that, understanding at least the basic concepts of thermals. You can see there's another ridge finger up here on the private, okay, and there's agriculture there. It leads me to believe that there's definitely probably deer up and around that agriculture, but that ridge system does run down into the public. So, you know, right on this property line might be another good spot, assuming that we got some southwest buck bedding going on up on the private. That's overlooking some of the ag fields, once again with the wind coming over their back. So it'd be a little bit hard to access this spot. You don't have a lot of options, but once again, might be a great spot to look. So overall, I mean, just at a glance, guys, we picked apart the Siloam Springs State Park in Illinois, and right there's 5 to 6 good spots that you could probably set up. And in reality, if you're only dealing with that 4 to 5 day trip, if you went to a new spot every day, that's 5 spots right there. When it comes to places like this, topography tells me everything. I don't necessarily look for edge habitat as much as the tops of draws or other pinch points during the rut, because eventually, with time, deer will pass through these areas. Now, don't get me wrong, if there is a habitat change where it's conifers to hardwoods or thicket to hardwoods or something like that, along with these topo features, and there's more edge, which ultimately dictates the way the deer move even more. Well, if we can put all those puzzle pieces together, we're hitting the jackpot. So as a whole, guys, I feel really good about Siloam Springs State Park. I think a lot of people would check this one off their list saying it doesn't have great access or there's too many trails. But then again, if all those people are checking it off, maybe it's a good reason for you to check it out. So Siloam Springs State Park, that's the Illinois public land pick apart.